But more important than that, the impact was significant. Meaning, even if it was just one packet, and it caused the impact of what happened in Estonia, as far as I'm concerned, that's good enough. The right tool for the right job. The scale, however, was impressive. I mean, consider the blogosphere. We have these tons of people just pinging all the time, some of them running batch files through ping, some of them running more impressive tools. But because the blogosphere was fired up, there were a lot of others. So, attacks of interest. We have had a spam attack, an email attack, against the Estonian parliament mail server. And there were 2 days of downtime. I'm not sure about this time. I need to check it again. Again, things are still in flux. We're still getting the full post-mortem formalized. But 2 days of the Estonian parliament's mail being down in a country that's basically based on the internet, that's pretty significant. There were 2 routers who crashed, or routers, or whatever you want to call them. In the first case, the router was misconfigured. Or, in other words, and I'm sorry for the language, shit happens. Seriously, there doesn't always need to be a bad guy, or as is often said, and can be attributed very easily using Wikipedia, don't always look for malice. Mistakes are easy enough. And the second case, a router, and this happened quite a bit, couldn't handle the traffic. So these were more interesting, but now we get to other issues such as botnet attacks. Now, these people who had pinging, or had the instructions on how to ping, or how to download this or that tool to attack Estonia, they didn't really launch a botnet attack, right? But just look at this, and this is happening pretty often. We have 1 or 2 measuring attacks, at least that's what I think they are, because this happens a lot in DDoS. And these happen for 2 to 5 minutes, no more than that. And continuing from there, there could be up an hour of nothingness, up to 2 or 3 weeks of nothingness, and then an attack, a significant one, that's precisely what you need in order to take down that link or that network. So this is not special to Estonia, but where did these botnets come from? So, again, they're quite regular, but, and this is pretty interesting, the botnet attacks, at least mostly, came only from outside of Estonia. There were nearly, or none, I am very afraid of saying every, all, none, of the bots came actually from the local networks until later on. Again, where did all this come from? What's the significance of this? You can look at the different attack here, and here is your answer. A comment was actually made. I believe this was also shown, a similar issue was shown on the F-Secure blog. And somebody was asking for donations to be made to a PayPal account because he started a fund. He wanted, or she wanted, to raise money to hire a botnet to attack Estonia. So people took the initiative. You fire up the blogosphere, you fire up the population. You can't expect everybody to just go and say, down with that statue, for example, if you're a mob. Some of them will pick up a gun. Some of them will break in. So the interesting thing about this attack, if you notice, and we believe that the message and the MRTG graph shown are actually related, but we can't be sure of that, is that at exactly 12 GMT time, which is 3 a.m. Estonian time, you can see a drop in the attack. It just disappears at midnight and was going on for 24 hours. So this could probably be a paid botnet attack. Now, another interesting thing, just to make sure that we covered this, it was just people. The scale of the attack is so interesting because it started with pings, but it went all the way to the most sophisticated attacks that any of us know of, because it's just the population. They got fired up. And to fire up a population, you don't need much more than ping. So, special botnets. This has also been seen before, especially by some Russian spam gangs. Again, unrelated. I have nothing against Russians. In fact, a fifth of Israel's population is probably Russians. My ex-girlfriend was Russian. Just doing a little disclaimers here because I don't want to get shot later on. But Unrelated, there was, for example, a botnet, we call it a botnet attack, where suddenly, without any warning, a lot of hosts started attacking Estonia. And when they were attacking Estonia, these hosts were looked at. They did not communicate with the command and control server or a C2 server. Nobody was controlling them. These machines did not probe around trying to propagate. Nothing of the sort. So how did this botnet come to be? What we have learned in the past when we have seen such attacks is that basically these samples of bots were likely just dropped there by an existing botnet. Probably on the same computers there was a sample, the same sample on every single computer if we were going to look for it, but I can't sign on that. And this seemingly untraceable botnet with a new sample, a new code, launched an attack. The IP addresses that were attacked were hard-coded into the bot. So this shows there was some planning, at least into this attack. There were some resources pulled into this. But we'll talk about who did this in a second. Just some more interesting attacks than just pings. So incident response, right? How do you do incident response, especially on the level of the country? It's not that difficult. You know, we start with what are the sources, right? And hopefully we can move through this quickly to get to actual interesting issues with strategy. So where are the attacks coming from? Who is being attacked? What are the targets? And if you're dealing with botnets, can we try and trace down the command and control servers so these can be nullified? Pretty straightforward. And of course, the first and the only goal is to bring systems back online. You're not trying to identify attacks. You're not trying to respond to them. You only care about the systems staying online, but whatever means are necessary, or you can muster at the problem, basically. So on the 28th, on the meeting, 2 decisions were made that changed this response methodology. One was, don't concentrate on the sources. Forget about that. Too many attacks, too many attackers, too many targets. All we can really concentrate on, in this case, is the targets first. Look at what's actually happening and go back from there. And the technical analysis, which was so far done done a lot, was to be limited. We don't have the manpower. Please analyze, do significant analysis only if it helps mitigation. Stop there. Now, the first line, don't concentrate on the sources of the attacks or the attackers, right? But rather on the targets first. We can just change targets and say impact. Look at the impact and you know where you need to respond. This is not preventative. This is pure reactive. So, Estonia has a very unique situation. First of all, everyone knows everyone, which means that if you don't go and change the ACL on the router right now because you can't access it remotely or whatever, I'll drive over and drag you out of bed. And the Estonian culture is pretty much like that. So it's very unique. Now, being small and the country's online presence being pretty much concentrated, you can actually block incoming connections to pretty much the entire country. Of course, on the internet, nothing is ever perfect. And this is probably one of the responses that worked best and cannot be scaled up to the United States, for example. At least not easily. At least not for everything. But again, this worked, was pretty interesting, so I mention it. Now, because Estonia is so small, and everybody knows everybody, there are methodologies on how to respond to incidents. They meet each other, they talk, they have worked together in the past. But when something happens, they pick up the phone. One of the official organizations in the country, the website was under attack for a while, and it went down. So the police, I'm sorry, no reason to add this, I'm just trying to remember. That was not one of the stories I want to share. The police, one of the smaller police websites went down. And then they just raised a few calls, and within an hour, somebody was with the server driving over to another ISP to put it there. This might happen between friends in the States, right? But the way everything works over there with the networking of a small group, it's much like a startup or a special forces team. It's not a huge corporation trying to work through bureaucracy. So I suppose that worked for them very well. Another issue was, which was really, in my opinion, luck, although you can say luck had nothing to do with this, was that they had the CERT, the Estonian CERT, with only two people there, which are Hilar and Ivar. Now, the CERT, this is due to, again, luck, is the first one to respond here. Because the first targets were on the Estonian government's sites. So as the Estonian government sites were under attack, the CERT immediately, of course, contacted ASO, and they were in contact with Elion, which is the uplink ISP. And as it happens, the CERT took charge. The second lucky thing that happened is the Estonian CERT manager is a very assertive and funny guy. So if somebody doesn't do something, he will go and, if it was me, he would sit on them, but I'm not sure what the right analogy for him is. And the third thing that was lucky is that many of the other websites that were under attack also sat at Elion, such as the bank websites. So Elion was already in contact with CERT and ASO, and the banks were already in the loop, and they were all sitting on the same chat channel, and things clicked. And from that moment on, by consensus and by just being there, the CERT did its intended job and basically managed the operation of the defense. And although Estonia is extremely advanced with its internet infrastructure and uses, as we mentioned before, it was ill-prepared, in my opinion, for the attacks. It was in some ways, although it has seen attacks in the past, again, my opinion, a virgin country in online attacks. It's a small country, nice people, no real reason to be attacked. And therefore, they weren't ready on that aspect. But the incident response proved useful. Meaning, if everything else fails, incident response saved the day. And I believe this is something we've all been seeing the past few years. You can try and prevent attacks, you can try and be ready. But eventually, whether it's malicious or a mistake, something does go wrong. It's how you respond that you are judged by. Of course, you'll be hanged anyway, because they'll want someone to blame, and the security guy is always a convenient target. But this is an important lesson. If I have to take one issue, one suggestion from the entire Estonian incident, it would be incident response worked, which is pretty cool. Now, that is the internal incident response. But what about all these attacking sources and botnets located around the world? So they escalated. They escalated much like you would in ISP calling tech support. They talked to other European CERTs in Germany, in Finland, and in Slovenia. And these CERTs, in turn, did all the abuse reporting, spoke to different internet security operation communities, and took care of things. Now, although these CERTs were very useful, although they helped a lot and a lot of credit they deserve this credit. This reaction failed. It did not, in short order, mitigate the attack. There is a very interesting and critical lesson to learn here, which is the internet is international infrastructure.